Good morning, everyone, and hello again. I'm Pastor Brett, and I'm excited to go over this devotional with you today. Today, we're going to be looking at Luke 2:22 to 40. If you missed the discussion yesterday, you may have missed that correction, so this is just to remind you that it is Luke 2:22 to 40 that we're going to be talking about. And now, as I read through this, there are a few things that I just want to pick out, some cultural or historical details to help make sense of this text. The first one I want to note, and this is more just something that an early reader who was familiar with the Old Testament law would have understood immediately, but doesn't necessarily jump out if you're not familiar with Leviticus. So, excuse me. In verse 24, it says that they, Jesus' parents, offered a sacrifice in keeping with what's stated in the law of Moses, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. So that was the sacrifice that was offered. There was a required sacrifice for dedicating your children. Their dedication process obviously was a little different than ours is today. But what's key here is the expected sacrifice is actually a sheep and a pigeon, or a sheep and a turtle dove. But what happened here is at the end of that section in Leviticus that talks about the required sacrifice, a provision is offered. It says, if the family cannot afford a sheep, they may instead offer 2 young pigeons or 2 young turtle doves. So what this tells us is that Mary and Joseph were not wealthy. They were not well off. They couldn't afford a sheep for the sacrifice for the firstborn son, so they had to sacrifice 2 pigeons. So it's just a note about the family and about the situation that they found themselves in. Next, I want to talk here about Simeon. So Simeon's behavior might seem strange to us. I mean, you can imagine if we were having a baby dedication in church, and there's the family up there with Pastor Tony, and they're holding the baby, and Pastor Tony's introducing and talking to them, and then somebody from the congregation, someone who's in their 80s or 90s maybe, comes up there, interrupts everybody, and takes the baby and is holding them and starts saying all this weird stuff about, now I can die in peace because I've finally seen your salvation. And then it turns to the mother and says, this child's going to change the world, and you're just going to be so sad as he gets older. Everyone would be like, whoa. Killer. That would seem strange to us, that particularly the involvement of somebody else in the baby dedication. We tend to think of it like the people who go up for the baby dedication are the family, the grandparents, that kind of thing. But this actually wasn't as weird as it might seem to our eyes. You see, the ancient world had a different kind of family and hospitality, and there was a certain idea where people aligned themselves very strongly with people who shared certain key features. So in this case, the Jews had a certain affinity for any Jew anywhere. And so there was also the sense of extended family. I mean, especially for the Jews who identified themselves by which set of brothers they were descended from. They saw themselves in terms of long lines of connection, of family, of unity. And so this behavior probably wasn't that weird, the idea that Simeon would be rejoicing with them over this child. The other thing that is true here is that the idea of prophecy was stronger in their day than it is in ours, in most churches. So in our church, and I would say in much of the Western world, in much of America and Europe, what you're likely to see is if somebody says, I have a prophecy, and they begin to announce things that they think will take place in the future, most people will view that with suspicion. That is, I suspect if you were like me, your first reaction to that is a little like gut check of, mm, did you really hear that? Or are you just making that up? But that wasn't the case in this time. In fact, fascinating. So I said yesterday about how the book of Psalms was collected over a long period of time and written by a lot of different people. Near this time period, there was a group of people living out in some caves. And the community that they lived in was called, the area they lived in was called Qumran. And we eventually have found a bunch of interesting documents there that you may have heard of. They're called the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, one really interesting thing that we found was like a sheet that was supposed to be the last in a collection of the Psalms. And it says, so it's like a postscript. It's not, you won't find this in the Bible. This is like a postscript that the people writing at this time period had added to the end of the book of Psalms. And it said, these are the 150 Psalms written by King David under the spirit of prophecy. So they believe that David wrote all 150, even those that clearly spoke about things years, hundreds of years after his life. They thought he wrote all of them by the power of the Holy Spirit and giving him prophetic insight. So they believed in the power of the prophetic. They believed that people could hear the voice of God and speak truth. And so Mary and Joseph, it says, they were amazed by what he said. This isn't like, are you sure? It's not that kind of amazed. They're like, wow, really? That's who this child is? He's that special? So this is pretty powerful. And his quote here, he says that that this child will be a light of revelation for the Gentiles and a glory for your people, Israel. This seems to come, or at least be the ideology is drawn from Isaiah 49. In verse 5 and 6, it talks about this idea of the restoration. God is saying, I'm going to restore Israel, but it's not enough that I restore them just for their own sake. I'm going to make them a light for all the nations. And so this idea of the salvation of Israel manifesting outward to all the world is not new. The prophets envisioned this kind of a restoration. So now, and then finally we have Anna here. And the thing that's interesting about Anna is she's from the tribe of Asher. Now, I make special note that she's from the tribe of Asher. And I think what's important here is that she spends all her time at the temple. And normally people who spend all their time at the temple are from the tribe of Levi. So she would not be permitted as a temple worker. She could not take care of the sacred elements. She couldn't work at the temple. She couldn't do sacrifices. Those were exclusively the province of the tribe of Levi. They were the caretakers of the temple. They didn't have any land. Their possession, as it was, the place that they were allowed to have and to own, to live and to work, was the temple, was not any plot of land. So her being from the tribe of Asher is just noteworthy because she wasn't normally going to spend all of her time there. Instead, this was a choice of her own dedication that she said, I've lost my husband. And in that time period, that often meant losing your sense of family, your connection, your future. Often when you got married, you left your family and joined the other family. And so when you lose the husband, she's lost, in a sense, kind of her whole world. But instead of giving up in despair, she chose to join to the temple and all. So the thing that I see in this passage, I'm just thinking about Holy Family Week, is how the people of God come together as a new family. You see, Mary and Joseph, impoverished and struggling and fearful and surprised by all of this that's going on, young people trying to make sense of their life, through the rituals of the community, through blessing and dedication, through gathering together, are able to find their place in the family of God. They're able to know themselves as chosen and beloved. They're able to find the sense of wonder through their connection to others, through Simeon's blessing and prophecy. Simeon himself, an old man near the end of his life, but yet still vibrant in his faith, goes to the temple, the hub of their community life, and is able to have this special moment of sharing, special moment of connection between people, because that's how God works. He draws people together. And Anna, who had lost her family, who all those years ago probably felt alone, desolate, and like there was nothing left for her, was able to find in the temple a life of joy, a life of profound impact. And so here she is able to be a part of this moment too. But God draws these people together, and he does so in a way in which everyone finds a place, finds a home, finds security and comfort in the community. And this whole situation can seem strange. It can seem so far distant from us. But when you kind of peel back all those layers of cultural differences and the kind of doubt and suspicion that are part of our worldview today, you can see that some of these human feelings are common across history. The mixture of excitement and nervousness for being new parents, navigating the complex rituals of your community, the wisdom, the unique insight that comes with age, and the ability of people who have been, for one reason or another, separated from their family, rejected from their other communities, can find a place in the community of faith. Because it's not just, looking at Anne, it's not just because of the death of a husband or wife that people find themselves isolated, but there are many reasons. People who move, divorce, changes in family, loss of parents or siblings. There are all these situations where people can suddenly find themselves bereft and adrift and trying to make sense of their life. And then, and still now, the community of faith can gather around these people and create a sense of family. So it's a beautiful thing that we can be a part of a church, part of a tradition in which we see each other as family. And so, friends, I hope that you are a part of this family as you're listening today. But if you're not, I want you to know that Pastor Andy, Pastor Tony, and I would love to talk with you if you want to be a part of the family. So I hope you have a great day. Merry Christmas.